comparative and absolute advantage as well as terms of trade. So let's start with an example. Let's say there are two people with two different tasks in a small economy. Let's say there is Paul and Ron with two different tasks. Let's say first is painting, second is roofing. Let me write some numbers. Let's say it takes Paul 300 hours to paint and 400 hours to roof a house. Similarly, for Ron, it takes 200 hours to paint and 100 hours to roof a house. So looking at these numbers, we can clearly see that Paul has an absolute advantage over Ron has an absolute advantage over Paul at both painting and roofing, which means that Ron takes fewer hours to perform each task than Paul does. Now let's calculate the opportunity cost. So the opportunity cost of painting for Paul is 300 divided by 400, right? Which is 3 by 4, which means Paul has to give up quarters of a roofing job, to paint a house. Similarly, let's calculate the opportunity cost of painting for Ron, which is 200 divided by 100, which is 2, which means he has to give up 2 roofing job to paint a house. So clearly we can see that opportunity cost of painting for Paul is less than for Ron, which means Paul has a comparative advantage over Ron at painting, right? Which means he is relatively more efficient at painting than Ron is. Now let's calculate the opportunity cost of roofing. Opportunity cost of roofing for Paul, which is 400 divided by 300, right? It is just the reciprocal. 400 divided by 300, that gives us 4 by 3. Similarly, opportunity cost of roofing for Ron is simply 100 divided by 200, which is 1 over 2, which is 0.5. So clearly we can see that the opportunity cost of roofing for Ron is less than for Paul. So Ron has the comparative advantage over Paul at roofing. So now let's talk about the terms of trade. Before we dive into the terms of trade, let me give you some claims, and you try to think about the statements whether it is true or false. So let me first give you some claims. So the first claim is, let's say there are two people in an economy with two different tasks. So the first claim is, if A has a comparative advantage in task 1 or job 1, and B will have a comparative advantage in job 2 or task 2. So is this claim true or false? You can pause the video and think about it for a while. Okay, so I'm going to answer this question. So the answer is yes, this claim is true. And we also saw this in the previous example, that when Paul has the comparative advantage at painting, um, and Ron has the uh, comparative advantage at roofing. So in general also this is true. Now let's move on to the next claim. So the second claim is, if A has an absolute advantage in 1 and B has an absolute advantage in 2, then A has comparative advantage in 1 and B has comparative advantage in 2. So is this claim true or false? Again, you can pause the video and think about it. So now I'm going to answer this question. So yes, this claim is true, and let's prove this claim. Okay, so let's go back to the previous example, and let me just cross these numbers and write A B C D instead. So let's say A B C D. Now our statement, our claim is, if A has an absolute advantage in 1 and B has an absolute advantage in 2, which means A has an absolute advantage, which means A should be greater than, A should be less than B, right? And C should be greater than D. Now let's find out the ratio of A over B, A over B and C over D. Now what is A over B? A over B is nothing but the opportunity cost of painting for Paul, and C over D is the opportunity cost of painting for Ron. Now what do you think, which ratio would be greater? Since B is larger than A, so A over B will be lesser than C over D, right? So C over D will be greater than A over B. So now you can clearly see that opportunity cost for of painting for Ron is greater than the opportunity cost of painting for Paul. So Paul has an comparative advantage, right? So when Paul has the absolute advantage, then Paul also has the comparative advantage. So it says if A has an absolute advantage in 1, then A has a comparative advantage in 1, which is true, right? So this claim is true. So yes. Now let's move on to the terms of trade. So terms of trade is basically an agreement. For example, the question will be like, 2 painting job per roofing job. So will they agree to exchange if the terms of the trade or the agreement is 2 painting job per roofing job? So now we'll answer this question based on the opportunity cost. So let's go back to the opportunity cost where previously we calculated the opportunity cost of painting and roofing. So here you can clearly see that so to answer this question we can also calculate the range of terms of trade. So let's first calculate the range of terms of trade. Terms of trade. we'll calculate the range for painting job per roofing job, because the question also asks for 2 painting job per roofing job, whether this is possible or not, that this agreement will work or not. So we'll calculate the range for this one. Now what is the opportunity cost? Now here we can see the opportunity cost of roofing for Paul is 4/3, right? 4/3. Opportunity cost of roofing for Paul is 4/3, which means for one roof he has to sacrifice 4/3 painting job, and opportunity cost of roofing for Ron is simply 1/2. So for one roof he has to sacrifice 1/2, or half of the painting job. So from this we can write that it should be painting should be greater than half but less than 4/3, right, for one roofing job. So now comparing, now we can easily see that 2 painting job does not lie in this range, right? So this agreement will not work out. No, this will not work out. Similarly, we can find out the range for, per painting, for roofing. We can calculate this one as well. So again, let's go back to the opportunity cost. Here we can see that the opportunity cost of painting for Paul is 3/4, and opportunity cost of painting for Ron is 2. So we can write that for one painting he has to sacrifice 3/4 roofing. For one painting he has to sacrifice 2 roofing. So we can write the terms of range of terms of trade as 3/4 should be greater than 2, right? And whatever will be the question, like this, we can basically answer based on these 2 ranges. So that's it for this video. Thank you for watching.